What if drawing closer to God isn't a gentle walk through meadows, but a climb that wounds before it heals? We love to say God is love, but we rarely ask what His love costs. We crave His presence, yet flee the mountains where He waits. Because to approach His heart means to be stripped, refined and undone, until the parts of you that cannot love like Him are left behind. Every soul begins this ascent believing it seeks God. But somewhere between the valley of comfort and the summit of surrender, the mountain exposes a deeper truth. It's not you chasing God, it's God calling you higher, through pain, silence and surrender. The very storms you begged Him to calm were the winds pushing you upward. The stones that bruised your feet were the lessons shaping your heart. Many begin the climb, few endure it, fewer still understand it. For the closer you rise, the more you lose, and the lighter you become, until pride dies, fear melts, and only faith breathes. For narrow is the way, and few there be that find it. Matthew 7:14. This is not a path for the curious, but for the called. Each level demands a death, and every death reveals more life. So if the ground beneath you shakes, don't descend. The mountain is testing what your worship is built on, because this isn't just a climb to reach God. It's a climb where God reaches into you until there's nothing left to ascend, because you've become what you were seeking all along. The question is, will you keep climbing when the climb starts testing you? Level 1, the awakening, hearing the call in the valley. What if your first encounter with God doesn't happen in a church, but in a silence so heavy it almost breaks you? We imagine awakening as light flooding in, but what if it begins with everything fading out? The noise, the plans, the people, the illusions, until you're left with nothing but the ache of your own soul and a voice that whispers through the emptiness, "Come out." This is the valley, the place where the world no longer satisfies, yet heaven still feels distant. You wake up one morning, and the things that once thrilled you feel hollow. The laughter around you sounds rehearsed. Success tastes like dust. You can't explain it, but something deep within you begins to hunger, not for more, but for meaning. That's not confusion, that's the sound of eternity knocking on the walls of your temporary life. God always calls from low places before He reveals the high ones. Moses heard Him from a burning bush in exile. Gideon met Him in fear. Saul was struck blind before he could truly see. The awakening never flatters the flesh. It shakes it. It dismantles everything you thought was enough, so you'll finally ask what truly is. Awake, O sleeper, and rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Ephesians 5:14. But here's the paradox. Most people mistake the call for crisis. They medicate it, distract it, scroll it away. They pray for comfort, not clarity. And so they stay in the valley, half awake, half alive, because awakening doesn't feel like revival. It feels like ruin. The voice doesn't shout, it pierces, and when it does, you realize the pain you've been running from was never punishment, it was invitation. This is where the climb begins, not with certainty, but with surrender. The first step isn't upward, it's inward, into honesty, into hunger, into the moment you stop pretending you're fine. The awakening is the mercy of God disguised as emptiness, the first whisper of His heart breaking into yours. So if you find yourself in that valley, restless, unsatisfied, undone, don't despise it. You're hearing the call. The same voice that spoke light into darkness is now calling your name. The question is not whether God is speaking, it's whether you'll finally stop running long enough to listen. Level 2, the surrender. Laying down what you cling to. What if the very things you call blessings are the same things keeping you from God? We speak of surrender as something noble, a quiet prayer whispered in church, but true surrender is not poetic. It's violent to the ego, costly to the heart, and sacred to the soul. It's the place where faith stops being a song and starts being a sacrifice. This is where the climb turns steep. You can't go higher while your hands are full. You can't reach for heaven while gripping what you fear to lose, so God begins to pry your fingers open, not to hurt you, but to free you. He will touch the thing you love most, not to take it, but to reveal whether you love it more than him. It's the moment Abraham stood on Mount Moriah, knife trembling, heart breaking, yet saying, "The Lord will provide." Genesis 22:14. Surrender is not weakness. It's the end of illusion. Because control is the greatest idol the modern soul worships, we cling to plans, timelines, and outcomes as if they could save us. But when God begins to strip them away, we call it loss, when in truth it's deliverance. The hands that let go become the ones that receive. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Matthew 16:25. And here lies the paradox no one wants to face. God won't compete with what you cling to. He will wait until your grip gives out, until you realize that what you were afraid to release was never keeping you safe, only keeping you small. True surrender doesn't come when you're ready. It comes when you're broken. It's not when you say, "I trust you," but when you whisper, "Even if you don't." This level breaks many, because it's the altar of exchange, your will for his, your plans for his purpose, your timing for his eternity. But the ones who bow here are never the same again. In the ashes of surrender, they find peace that control could never build. So if God is asking for what you're afraid to lose, don't fight him, lay it down. The hands that surrender are the only ones strong enough to hold heaven, because the path to God's heart is not climbed by holding tighter, but by letting go. Level 3, the refining, where fire becomes friend. What if the fire you're praying for God to remove is the very thing he sent to reveal himself? We beg for deliverance from the flame, but what if the flame is the deliverance? We call it pain, heaven calls it purification. Because before God can shine through you, he must first burn away everything that dims his light. This is the furnace of the climb, the place where faith stops sounding beautiful and starts costing something. The refining fire isn't punishment, it's precision. It doesn't destroy gold, it exposes it. And if your heart feels like it's melting, maybe it's because heaven is reshaping it. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. Notice, he sits. God isn't pacing nervously while you burn. He's seated, calm, intentional, holding you in his gaze until he can see his reflection in you. But this is the part most never understand. The same fire that torments the impure transforms the surrendered. To one it feels like loss, to the other it feels like love. The difference isn't the heat, it's the heart. When you stop fighting the flame, it stops consuming you and starts cleansing you. That's when fire becomes friend, when you realize it's not trying to end you, but to reveal the you that cannot be destroyed. Suffering, then, is not proof that God has abandoned you. It's proof that he trusts you with transformation, because gold is never refined in comfort. The more valuable the vessel, the hotter the fire. And sometimes the silence inside the flame is not God's absence, it's his focus. He is working too deeply to speak. Here, you begin to see pain differently. It's no longer your enemy, but your teacher. You stop asking why me, and start asking what in me. You begin to understand that every heartbreak, every delay, every hidden season was not wasted, it was welded. So if you're walking through fire right now, don't curse it, don't rush it. The heat you feel is not hell, it's heaven refining what hell could never touch. Stay in the fire long enough and you'll realize it was never sent to burn you, but to make you shine. Level 4, the revelation, seeing God as he really is. What if the greatest barrier between you and God isn't sin, but your idea of him? We all see God through the lens of our wounds, the strict father, the distant king, the silent judge, the gentle but powerless comforter. Yet revelation begins when God shatters the image you built of him and replaces it with himself. Up until now, you followed the voice through the valley, surrendered your will, endured the fire, but here, everything changes. The smoke clears, the noise fades, and for the first time you begin to see not the God of religion, but the God of relationship, not the God of fear, but of fierce tenderness, not a deity to be appeased, but a Father who never stopped pursuing you. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Matthew 5:8. Revelation doesn't come through study, it comes through surrender. The scriptures you've read for years suddenly burn alive, like lightning striking your soul. You realize he was never hiding. Your eyes were simply veiled by expectation. When he reveals himself, it's not with thunder, but with truth, so gentle it breaks you. Because his holiness isn't cold distance, it's consuming love. His justice isn't vengeance, it's mercy wearing armor. Here lies the paradox. Seeing God clearly means seeing yourself honestly. His light exposes what your pride painted over. His nearness strips away every mask. The same presence that comforts you also confronts you. You can't see his face and stay the same, because revelation is not information, it's transformation. And sometimes it takes the breaking of your image of God for you to meet the God who breaks for you. Many stop climbing here, content with glimpses, afraid of glory. But those who dare to look deeper find what Moses found, not a God demanding perfection, but a God revealing his heart. "Show me your glory," Moses cried, and God answered, "I will make all my goodness pass before you." Exodus 33:18-19. This is revelation, not a new God, but new eyes. To see him not as religion taught, but as love revealed. To see that his face was never turned away, only hidden by our blindness. So when the veil begins to lift, don't close your eyes. Let him reveal himself, even if it undoes everything you thought you knew. Because the closer you come to seeing God as he truly is, the more you become who you were truly meant to be. Level 5, the union, when his heart beats inside yours. What if the highest form of faith is not believing in God, but belonging to him? Most people spend their lives chasing the feeling of being close to God. But at this level, you stop chasing because you realize there was never any distance. The illusion of separation dies, and something greater begins to live inside you. This is not emotion, it's fusion, not religion, relationship so deep it becomes identity. Union is not about doing more for God, it's about becoming with God. The prayers that once asked, "Lord, come near," now whisper, "Lord, live through me." You start to breathe his peace, think his thoughts, love with his love. You no longer perform holiness, you embody it. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Galatians 2:20 Dalstondi, Wataneti Dalstondi Dwats. But this oneness is not born in triumph, it is born in death. The death of striving, the death of pride, the death of needing to be enough. You realize that union doesn't happen when you reach perfection, but when you run out of pretending. The veil between your will and his will dissolves, and you discover something shocking. The more you lose yourself, the more you find him, and the more you find him, the more you finally find yourself. Here lies the mystery few dare to enter. Intimacy so deep it feels like disappearance. You no longer pray to encounter God, you live as the encounter. The gap between heaven and earth begins to close, not because the world changed, but because your heart did. When you walk, heaven moves. When you forgive, his mercy breathes. When you love the unlovable, it's his heartbeat pulsing through your chest. Many fear this level because it feels like losing control, and it is. But that's what makes it holy. True union means you stop being the center of your own story. Your name fades so his name can be seen, and somehow, in that surrender, joy explodes. You realize you were never meant to imitate Christ, you were meant to inhabit him. This is not the end of the journey, it's the merging of every step that came before. The valley, the fire, the breaking, all of it was leading here. The climb was never about reaching God's heart. It was about discovering he had already placed his heart inside yours. So stop striving to feel close to him, and start living as one who already is. Because when his heartbeat becomes yours, heaven is no longer a place you go, it's the life you live. Level 6, the transformation. becoming love itself. What if the final stage of knowing God isn't worshipping Him, but becoming what He is? We spend our lives trying to reflect His love, but reflection is still distance. At the summit of the climb, reflection gives way to embodiment. You no longer mirror the light, you are light. This is not imitation, this is incarnation, the mystery of divine nature breathing within human skin. Transformation is the death of duality, where you and God cease to be two. You no longer love for Him, or because of Him, you love as Him. Every word becomes grace, every glance carries mercy, every silence holds peace. You no longer ask, what would Jesus do? Because you realize He is doing it through you. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God in him. 1 John 4:6. But this level is not glorious comfort, it's glorious cost. To become love means you must lose everything that isn't love. Pride, fear, resentment, all burn away in a sacred undoing. What remains is not perfection, but purity. A soul so yielded that even pain becomes prayer. The nails that once wounded now build compassion. The scars that once shamed now shine. The more you're broken, the more His light leaks through the cracks. And here lies the greatest paradox. When you become love, you no longer need to prove you've met God, because your presence alone becomes the proof. People encounter you, and they encounter Him, not through sermons, but through your stillness. Not through miracles, but through your mercy. Transformation isn't a moment, it's a metamorphosis, a slow resurrection from self into spirit. At this summit, you finally understand. Holiness was never about separation, it was always about saturation. God doesn't live above you, He lives as you, loving through your hands, speaking through your kindness, healing through your forgiveness. Heaven is no longer something you reach for, it breathes through you. This is the end that is actually the beginning, the place where being and becoming collapse into one. The climb is over, but the radiance has just begun. Because when you become love itself, you stop pointing people to God and start revealing that He's been here within them all along. Conclusion: the few who make it. What if the gate to God's heart was never locked, only narrow? We imagine heaven as a reward for the good, but Scripture calls it a road for the surrendered. The path is open, but few walk it, not because God hides it, but because pride blinds it. We crave glory without dying, peace without pruning, holiness without hunger. Yet the mountain of God cannot be climbed by comfort, only by surrender. Every step up this sacred ascent costs something the world taught you to protect: your certainty, your control, yourself. One by one they fall away, and each loss feels like dying, until you realize you're not losing life, you're losing what kept you from it. That's why so few reach the summit, because the journey demands not strength but softness, not perfection but persistence, not brilliance but brokenness. For narrow is the way that leads to life, and few there be that find it. Matthew 7:14, Bulreinfingrampel. Wand uptob, hesklokrecht. Wandide nog pleim, 14 void. Wandide nog pleim, fetf, for hapsiklov. Wandide nog pleim, for hapsiklov. Wandide nog pleim, for hapsiktokref. And for hapsiktokref, for hapsiktokref. For hapsiktokref, 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 for hapsiktograph, 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 for hapsiktograph. But here lies the mystery. The climb was never about proving devotion. It was about revealing belonging. God doesn't measure how high you reach. He measures how deeply you let him in. The summit is not a place, but a person. You don't arrive at God's heart. You awaken to find you've been held by it all along. The very valley you despised was his classroom. The fire you feared was his mercy. The silence you mistook for absence was his invitation to listen closer. Few ever make it, not because God demands the few, but because few are willing to be undone. Yet those who do, their eyes carry eternity. Their words heal without effort. Their lives become living altars, proof that transformation is real. They are no longer climbing. They have become the mountain itself, steady, radiant, filled with the pulse of heaven. So if you find yourself weary on the path, take heart. The climb is not in vain. Every step upward is a step inward. And when you finally reach what you've been chasing all your life, you'll hear a voice whisper, not from above, but from within. You made it, not because you conquered the mountain, but because you let the mountain conquer you.